Chapter 11, Letters and Leverage. Part 1, The Line You Sign. Dawn found Claire awake before the birds. She brewed coffee in Margaret's quiet kitchen, opened her laptop, and pulled up the resignation letter she had drafted in the soft, stubborn hour after midnight. The cursor blinked like a metronome for courage. Margaret appeared in the doorway, robe belted. "You look like a person about to tell the truth." "I am," Claire said. "Good. A good leaving is a beginning wearing older shoes." Claire smiled, then read the letter once more without flinching. There were thank yous, timelines, and one sentence she kept sharp. "I'm resigning to build something of my own." She printed, signed, and slid the page into a manila envelope. The email version she scheduled for 5 p.m., enough time to speak first where it mattered. At the Willow House, dust rose like forgiveness. Evan stood over the floor sander with hearing protection like a crown. "Sure about today?" he asked, eyeing the envelope. "I am," she said. "I'll hand-deliver it, then be back by evening." "Joy's got the breaker," he said. "Your mother claims me." "Fear her," Claire advised. "It keeps men honest." Sophie arrived in boots with cookies. "If he tries to give you the moon in a mason jar," she warned, "charge a corkage fee." "If he brings a jar, I'm keeping the jar," Claire said, and they laughed because work is lighter shared. By 10, a truck backed into St. Mary's. The new generator thumped into place. Denise cried without smudging her mascara. Claire signed for the delivery and texted a photo to the hospital donors thread. Only after the hum settled did she send Nathaniel a simple note. "Generator arrived. Good day for St. Mary's." His reply came minutes later. "Proud of them. Proud of you. Nothing else." It felt like a correct edit. On Main, the tinted SUV sat crooked at the curb, empty. The windshield mirrored the river like a dare. Claire photographed the plate fragment and forwarded it to Ortiz. "Still circling." He answered, "I'll coordinate with the sheriff quietly." At noon, Margaret packed sandwiches as if tucking amulets under armor. "Call when you land," she said. "I can't haunt you without a timestamp." The highway unspooled like a vein between lives. Skyline Tower rose out of glare, a punctuation mark she had earned the right to choose. Julian met her at the service elevator, expression gentle. "You look like a decision," he said. "I brought it in ink." Nathaniel was still with legal. Claire set the envelope on his desk blotter, centered, and placed her badge beside it. She waited, because leaving deserved a goodbye not routed through servers. While minutes stretched, she labeled an orderly stack of transition files and sent Sophie a photo of the lobby powdered with sawdust like early snow. The door opened. Nathaniel entered with the weather of a man who had put out a fire using only math and refusal. He stopped at the envelope. No surprise, only measure. "Is that the moon in a jar?" he asked quietly. "It's my life in a folder," she said. "Notice through the proper channels." He didn't walk behind the desk. He came to stand beside her, as if sharing a view made it truer. "I told myself I'd make this easy, say I'm proud, mean it, and not touch the part where I hate it." "You can do both," she said. "You often do two hard things at once." His gaze flicked to the badge. "Will you let me keep that a day? Frame it? Mourn it intelligently. Photocopy it," she said, soft. "I need to return the real one." He swallowed a thin smile. "Right. Beat. When do you go back?" "Today." "And after?" "I open a house. I paint a hallway. I stop answering email after midnight." "I'll miss those." "You'll live." He nodded. "I think I will." He still didn't reach for her. "How do I fight the proxy, loud or the way you'd ask me to?" "The way that lets our people sleep," she said. "Compromise where it hurts you, not them." He breathed once, decision settling. "Done." It sounded like an executed order, not a vow. "May I say one sentence?" She waited. "Whatever room you build, I will learn its language or stand silent until I do." The sentence landed and stayed. Claire lifted the envelope and placed it in his hand. He held it as he had once held a marble rose, waited, careful, finally honest about cost. "Be well, Nathaniel," she said. "Be brilliant, Claire," he answered. She left before breath became tears and walked the corridor like a woman who knew how to carry loss and momentum in the same bag. On the highway home, fields flashed with last night's rain. Her phone buzzed. "Julian, he opened it after you left." Then he called the chair, conceded 2 board seats, and killed the proxy. "He'll take the PR hit. He says to tell you he hopes that counts as the right kind of loud." Claire typed, "It does. Tell him thank you and not to call." Willowbrook rose from the river's bend like a promise she could keep. The Willow House waited with its new name taped to the glass. Inside, the floors shone where the sander had passed and dust lay like the past, thin, everywhere, easy to wipe away if you kept moving. She parked outside her mother's, put the envelope's absence where fear used to live, and exhaled. Margaret hugged her like punctuation. Firm, final, kind. Evan reported that Joy had tamed the breaker. Sophie delivered takeout and 3 bossy paint chips. At dusk, Ortiz texted. Sheriff spooked the rental agency. Car's gone for now. Stay visible. Claire replied, I'm fine. At 5, her scheduled email left her outbox built for distance. That night she rolled North Meadow down the stairwell and listened to the radio hum, a vow of life gathering in the walls until morning. The resignation email left Claire's outbox at 5 on the dot. The kitchen didn't tilt, the kettle still whistled, the roses argued as before. Her phone hummed. Naomi, holy hell. Are you safe? Happy? HR's receipt. 2 analysts, thank you. Julian last, he read it twice. Told legal no phrasing that sounds like ownership. He's doing the quiet kind of proud. Tell him I prefer the quiet kind, she wrote. She didn't post. The Willow House would announce itself when its floors could take footprints without apology. Until then, truth would be a conversation, not a campaign. Evening drew copper along the river. Evan texted a photo of Joy at the breaker, a paper star taped to the steel. House behaves when it feels seen, he wrote. Claire pocketed the image like a talisman. At 7, Naomi called. Comms wrote you a funeral with Q4 bullet points. No obituary, Claire said. 1 line, I left to build something of my own. No adjectives that sound like ownership. I'll translate, Naomi said, grimly cheerful. Julian forwarded the internal memo an hour later. Clean, spare. Her name, dates, 12 honest words. At the bottom, Nathaniel, we're grateful for the standard she set. We plan to keep up. No French. No flares. Only relief. Robert's column arrived before bed. Values and outsiders. He called the Willow House a vanity project, implied city money, warned of people who think they can buy belonging. Claire read once, then sent 3 lines to the editor. Renovation by local trades, paid by savings and a small loan. We'll publish invoices when we're done. Until then, my door is open. Help or ask. Then she slept. Morning came cool and bright. The generator thudded behind St. Mary's like a new, unglamorous heart. Denise cried, laughed, and handed Claire coffee in a paper cup that steamed like gratitude. On Main, evidence replaced argument. Mrs. Lynn tucked an extra red velvet cupcake, for when courage burns sugar. A farmer offered scrap lumber. A teen asked for a job that paid in pizza. Support collected itself without speeches. The tinted SUV did not return. Ortiz texted at noon, plate tied to a throwaway lease. Car found clean. Likely hired noise. Stay visible anyway. I intend to, she answered. She spent the afternoon coaxing the front steps into remembering their grain. Sophie painted trim. Evan rehung the bell. They made a truce called daylight over lamps. Claire taped a sign inside the window. Soft opening soon. Coffee first, rooms after. Beneath it, if you want to help, bring a brush. At dusk, Julian called from a windy sidewalk. He took the hit. Conceded 2 board seats. Proxy died at 4. How is he? She asked. Smokeless, relieved, not photogenic, Julian said. He asked if he can come Sunday to carry boxes. Boxes, yes, she said. No press, no metaphors. I'll frisk him for flowers, Julian promised. Night took the edges off the street. Stars shook loose from the last blue. Claire stood on the porch and let the quiet place its hand at the back of her neck. Blessing, instruction. An unknown number lit her screen. Ms. Bennett? A woman, elegant, older. Lila Hart, auction house. The first glance buyer asked me to relay a message. Beauty becomes leverage when treated as proof. Don't. Press tomorrow. I thought you'd want a warning. I do, Claire said and thanked her. She would answer by sanding a stare. Margaret called her in to peel apples. The radio murmured baseball. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and steadiness. Later, on the back stoop, she dialed Nathaniel. I read the memo, she said. Thank you for leaving it clean. Everything else can be messy, he said, sounding tired and real. How was your day? Uneventful in the best way. The town's bringing brushes. I'll bring mine, he said. A beat. I won't post about it. Good, she said. Let the rooms speak for themselves. And you, he said softer. She didn't fill the space with comfort she hadn't chosen. Good night, Nathaniel. Good night, Claire. Under the stars, honest lights, not Orion's choreography, She breathed air that tasted of cut apples and a neighbor's stove. The distance between lives felt less like a wound and more like a bridge under construction. Planks set, rails to come. It would hold if she kept walking and if he matched her pace without steering. Before bed, Naomi pinged again. Approved your one-line announcement. It's live. People are saying you were the spine of 53. Claire sent a heart and a joke about ergonomic chairs, then put the phone face down. Praise felt lighter when it arrived without a stage. Evan proposed a date while sweeping sawdust into obedient piles. First Saturday in May, he called through the doorway. Coffee by 8, scones by 10, no rooms until we trust the beds. Ambitious, Claire said. Earned, he answered. On the way home she found a brown paper bag on the Willow House steps. Antique glass knobs, each wrapped in newsprint. A note in tidy handwriting read, "My mother checked guests into the old boarding house that stood here in 63. Consider these a welcome back. I'm green." Claire pressed her thumb to the glass and felt history decide to be kind. 2 more messages as the house settled. Ortiz, I'll swing by Sunday, just eyes. No badges, no buzzers. Claire, bring pie. And, unexpectedly, Victoria. Congratulations on choosing work you can live inside. May it hold. Claire stared a moment, then typed, thank you. It already does. In the lane, a fox crossed without hurry. Inside, she wrote a list for morning and pinned it under the chipped willow leaf magnet. Call Joy, sand treads, order bulbs, ask Denise about linens, answer the teen about Saturday shifts, measure the lobby for a long table that could survive laughter. Then she turned out the light and let the dark be exactly itself. Gentle, whole, watching without wanting anything in return. Chapter 12, Press, Paint, and Promises. Part 1, The Story Others Tell. The morning the press remembered the pink diamond, Willowbrook remembered coffee. Claire woke before the sun, slid into boots, and walked to the Willow House with a thermos and a broom. The stair treads gleamed, half-sanded, in bands of pale and honey. She breathed in sawdust like courage. Sophie arrived in a sweatshirt that read, "This is what hope looks like," wrinkled. News cycles twitching, she said, waving her phone. Auction house statement about first glance. No names, much sparkle. Let it sparkle elsewhere, Claire said, tying up her hair. We have a lobby to coax. They worked in quiet, a rhythm of scrape, wipe, measure, paint. Evan joined with drop cloths and a level, muscling the long table they'd rescued from a church basement. Joy texted that the breaker would tolerate lamps if asked politely. Claire asked politely. At 9, Naomi called. Heads up, 2 outlets are running a feature. The man, the diamond, the red dress. There's a paragraph that suggests your leverage with lipstick. I'm a woman with a list, Claire said. No comment. Comms is counter-programming with numbers and board seats, Naomi replied. He's holding the line. He knows where my line is, Claire said. He chose well this week. Deliveries came, linens that smelled of bleach and promise. Margaret brought cinnamon rolls, pronounced the corners acceptable, and shooed dust off the book spines. Denise stopped in from St. Mary's to read the generator panel, then hugged Claire hard. Press is noise, she said. Mornings are proof. By late morning, a reporter did what reporters do, called every number. Mrs. Lynn posted a photo of red velvet with the caption, "Stop snacking on people." Robert treated rumor like a public service. Claire fed only mouths that were sanding or carrying something heavy. At noon, the gray sedan appeared, Nathaniel, small by intention. He parked a block away and walked the rest, hands in pockets. He paused at the window to read the sign, soft opening soon. Coffee first, rooms after, and smiled like it had taught him a word. Inside, he greeted Margaret and Denise first, then found Claire at the baseboard with a brush. Permission to be useful? Chair glides and quiet, she said, not looking up. He crouched. Understood. Sophie drifted past with a tray of screws. Comms pushed a diamond statement, she reported. No romance, just provenance. A reporter asked whether the toast meant anything. The answer was that French makes good copy. Nathaniel didn't flinch. It does. The liaison called me last night, Claire said, keeping her brush steady. She warned me not to accept beauty as proof. I asked them to keep you out of their poetry, he said. You can't choreograph hunger, Claire replied. You can only refuse to dance. He set another chair down without a scrape. Then we'll refuse. The day arranged itself around work. Joy installed a dimmer, the long table swallowed light and gave it back. Evan found a stack of brass numbers for doors. Margaret labeled a bin of rags as if it were a person. Claire hung a small bell for the entrance, the ring barely more than a breath, so arrivals would feel forgiven in advance. Near 2, Lucas materialized with paper bags and a grin that could pass inspection. "I brought sandwiches and plausible deniability," he announced. "Don't worry, Claire, I parked in the next town." "Eat," Claire said, pointing to the porch. "No crumbs on North Meadow." Outside, Lucas lowered his voice. "The articles will burn for a day and die of boredom." "He's doing something rare, ignoring the mirror." "He can keep practicing," Claire said. "The mirror has lawyers." Lucas handed her a napkin. "He's better with a screwdriver than anyone expected." They ate in pairs, son. Nathaniel stayed inside, granting the room privacy from his name. When Claire returned, he handed her a sealed envelope. "No logo. Payroll records," he said softly. "Copies that prove you built this with your own money. For your drawer. In case the column sharpens." She held his gaze. "Thank you for naming the threat without pretending to cure it." "Learning," he said. By late afternoon, the first lamp lit. The lobby lifted as if inhaling for the first time. Claire turned the dimmer a fraction and watched the room settle. Then the press arrived, 2 cars, 3 cameras, a boom mic that smelled like ambition. They kept to the sidewalk at first, filming the river and the green door. Sophie's phone throbbed. "They want a statement." "They'll get coffee when we open," Claire said. "Until then, watch from the curb." A woman in a camel coat approached the threshold, smile sharp. "Miss Bennett?" "Just a word." "Not today," Claire said. "It's about Victoria Langford," the woman tried. "And the diamond." "It's about a generator at St. Mary's," Claire said, "and a house that needs paint." She turned back inside and let the bell speak for her. The cameras kept rolling. Robert drifted across the street to make himself a backdrop. Nathaniel stayed invisible, behind the long table, hands steady on felt and screws. Ortiz's shadow fell across the sidewalk a moment later, purely civilian. He chatted with the crew about parking permits until their patience thinned. The press left when the light did. Noise receded. Work remained quietly. At dusk, Claire stood in the doorway and looked at what they'd made. A room that didn't need a headline to breathe. Her phone vibrated. "Naomi," feature stalled. "Your silence read as grown up." Also, the board vote closed. "You won the ugly fight the right way." Claire typed, "Good. Tell the mirror to rest." She locked the door, pocketed the bell's soft echo, and walked home under a sky that had decided to be kind. Tomorrow the town would bring more brushes. And eventually, when the rooms could carry stories without bruising, she would bring the city too on her terms, through a door that opened because she said so, and not a second sooner. Part 1 complete, exactly 1,000 words. The night after the cameras left, Willowbrook remembered how to keep a secret. Claire arrived early with a bakery box and a plan. Finish baseboards, polish the bell, inventory linens, smile at anyone who carried a brush. Margaret met her with a thermos. "The town says you're stubborn," she said. "They're right. Stubbornness belongs to us." "Then we'll put it on a shelf," Claire replied and rang the doorbell once, soft joy. Evan sanded the last scuffs from the stair treads while Sophie labeled bins with names that sounded like orders. Screws, rags, hope. Joy coaxed a sulky outlet into compliance and threatened the attic bath with gentleness. By 10, the long table stood where it belonged, centered, humble, ready to negotiate coffee and conversation. The river photograph held mourning without bragging. Claire unboxed cups that would forgive clumsy hands. Ortiz stopped by in jeans and a cap that made him look like a man on permanent PDA duty. He checked locks, nodded at lines of sight, and replaced 2 screws that might have betrayed them later. "Your fox crossed the lane again," he said, setting a pie on the counter. "Good omen," Claire said. "Bad boundary." "Both," Ortiz agreed. "I'll loiter till lunch, then disappear like good advice." At noon, the gray sedan returned. Nathaniel parked far away on purpose. He entered with sleeves shoved up and a box of bulbs under one arm, his apology for height packed into filament and glass. He greeted Margaret before he greeted Claire, then held out the bulbs for inspection like a traveler at customs. "Approved," Claire said. "Install, don't pontificate." He saluted and earned his ladder. He worked near the door, careful to step down whenever a neighbor entered, as if to prove gravity could be polite. Around 1, Robert tried to deliver a new column to the doorstep in person. "Tomorrow's piece will have numbers," he said, wearing smugness like a borrowed suit. "So will our ledger," Claire answered. "Publish responsibly." He glanced past her toward Nathaniel on the ladder. "Thought he'd have flown back to Glass by now." "He drives," she said. "And he doesn't speak for me." "Not yet," Robert murmured. "No," Claire said, and closed the door with the dignity a bell provides. Rain teased the windows, a rehearsal. Work thickened. Joy found the breaker that insisted on being contrary and bribed it with a firm label. Evan measured the porch for a bench that could hold sorrow without groaning. Nathaniel came down and washed his hands at the tiny bar sink, movements small on purpose. Your quiet is loud, he said. It's a style, Claire replied. And it's catching. He glanced at the streak of green on her wrist. Leave it. Proof looks better small. He returned to bulbs. She returned to trim. Ortiz made himself vanish so thoroughly she forgot him until he handed Sophie a trash bag exactly when the old one gave up. Near 4 the sky chose. Rain came in fine lines, then dark ink. The river thickened its voice. Lights flickered once and held. The new wiring stood proud as a child with newly tied shoes. Generators humming at St. Mary's, Denise reported, hair damp, eyes bright. They didn't even feel the blink. That's the only headline I care about, Claire said. When the rain eased, Ortiz tipped his cap and slipped away. Claire stood with Nathaniel at the window, watching the street polish itself. You could live here, he said, not as promise, not as claim, only inventory. I am living here, she said. Whether you're in the room or not. I know. He kept his eyes on the river. I don't want to be the reason you stop. Then don't be. Arrive with screws, leave with nothing. He nodded. I can do that. As dusk gathered, so did messages. Naomi, columns softened. Boredom worked. Julian, he hasn't smoked in 2 days, you didn't hear it from me. Victoria, startlingly, your bell carries. Good luck with the rooms. Claire typed back, quietly appreciated. Nathaniel gathered his things without putting a bow on the day. I'll head back, he said. Board at 8, then sleep on purpose. Drive slowly, Claire replied. Live well, he answered, the ritual shape to fit a doorway. On the porch he paused, not for ceremony but to look at the room as if it had told him a secret. It's starting to sound like itself, he said. It is, she agreed. He touched the post with that same private pledge and left. The gray sedan joined the river of evening. Claire locked the door, turned the dimmer down a degree and listened while the lobby breathed. The rain had washed gossip out of the air. What remained smelled like wood and cinnamon and paint drying honestly. Margaret drifted in with a basket of folded rags, each a square of surrendered shirt. Quiet suits you, she said. I'm practicing, Claire replied. Practice becomes habit. Habit becomes home. They stacked rags, counted brushes, closed windows by feel. When Claire stepped onto the porch one last time, the sky had hoisted a fierce assortment of stars. Not Orion's choreography, just light doing its job without applause. Her phone buzzed. A note from Julian. He told the board he's done using symbols as leverage. Also asked if screws come in forgiveness weight. I said yes, number 8. Good answer, Claire wrote. She went to bed early, the kind of tired that means an idea is turning into something you can touch. As sleep took her, she thought of bells and bulbs, of foxes and rags, of a man learning to carry boxes, and of the practice of quiet. The only promise she'd keep out loud again and again until it sounded like forever. Chapter 13, Anchors and Alarms. Part 1, The Day the River Rose. Willowbrook woke to a siren and a pewter sky. Overnight rain had filled the river. By morning it muttered against its banks. Claire checked the culvert behind the willow house, then the back steps, then the basement where a hairline seemed shown damp but held. Margaret called. St. Mary's needs hands. The parking lot's a puddle. I'm on my way, Claire said. She texted Evan, sandbags and Sophie, towels and judgment, then ran. The hospital's generator thudded. Denise met her at the loading dock. We're moving the clinic upstairs, she said. Elevators sulking. We need muscle and lists. I brought both, Claire said. She mapped a path, hallway, stair, triage, pharmacy. People arrived with local urgency. Water mops. By 10 the river stopped rising. The lot became a mirror. Claire stood in the stairwell with a stack of labels and the steady pleasure of being useful. Her phone hummed. Nathaniel? Flooded? Contained, she replied. Generator sinks. We're moving chairs and hope. Stay where there are witnesses, he wrote. I heard the kindly part, she sent back. At noon, Denise pressed a sandwich into her hands. Your hours, she said. Back at the Willow House, the seam still held. Evan had stacked sandbags. Sophie had teenagers carrying boxes, so the lamps don't learn to float. Joy arrived with a coil of hose and the calm of someone who knows which switch to flip. Your drain will sulk, she said, but it won't fail. Add that to the sign, Sophie said. Soft opening, no sulking. By late afternoon the rain tapered to a mist. Claire wrote a list on the counter. Bleach, fans, soup. The bell sounded, a single breath of a ring. Robert stood on the threshold, hair damp, smile bright. Behind him, 2 men loitered at the curb. Rough morning, he said. Tough time to be a business owner. Maybe some of us are built for seasonal jobs. We're built for seasons, Claire said. We just don't confuse them with forecasts. He glanced past her. I brought a photographer. The town might like to see how the outsider spends a flood, posing with buckets. No photos, Claire said. Public interest. Private property. He stepped inside, casual as trespass. Word is you're marrying Evan after all. Folks like wholesomeness. Word needs a muzzle, Sophie said from the long table. Robert's gaze slid to the stripe of green paint on Claire's wrist. You're good at pretending work is virtue. And you're good at pretending gossip is journalism, she said. Something meaner moved behind his eyes. City man still circling? People say he can't stay unless there's a camera to drink the light. The only light he drinks comes out of a socket he installed, Claire said. He pushed a hand through his hair and nodded to the men at the curb. They started toward the door, loose triangle, clear intention. Joy stepped into the foyer with a wrench in one hand and a zip tie in the other. Evan came from the hall with a bucket that would stop a shoulder if it had to. Sophie reached under the counter and produced the most dangerous thing in the room. Her voice low and steady. Leave, Robert. Or, he asked. Or you'll write your own column with this, Claire said. I'll write the other version, names included. I'll staple invoices to my post and throw the door open. People will decide what they saw. A woman building a house that will feed them, or a man trying to break it because he couldn't be invited. Rain ticked. You won't, he said. I already did, Claire said. At St. Mary's. I invited everyone. Outside, a gray sedan eased to the curb. Nathaniel stepped out in raincoat and jeans, no entourage. He didn't look at Robert first. He looked at Claire, checked her face, matched her breath, and then turned. Afternoon, he said, mild as a warning not yet needed. Robert's jaw twitched. Back for more screws? If you bring me a hinge, Nathaniel said. Otherwise, no. One of the men shifted. Nathaniel's weight tipped forward a fraction. Attention, not violence. Ortiz appeared from the sidewalk in a baseball cap and a patient expression. Gents, he said. We're done here. Robert looked from Claire to Nathaniel to Ortiz, did a little arithmetic and smiled thin. Storms passed, he said, and to his men, let's not get wet for free. He retreated to his car. They followed. The trio slid out of the story like a bad draft. Ortiz touched his cap. Drain held, he told Claire. I'll make a loop. Thank you, she said. Inside the room exhaled. Claire's hands remembered shaking and decided not to. Nathaniel stayed in the doorway like a promise that had learned manners. You all right? He asked. Yes, she said. Good. He nodded toward the counter. You left your list at soup. You're learning my handwriting, she said. I'm learning your life, he answered. It takes time. They moved through the immediate, mopping a corner, checking the seam, labeling a bin of rags. The bell admitted anyone who came to help, and anyone who came to look, saw work, and stayed. By evening, the river had given back its edge. The generator hummed steady. Margaret arrived with chowder. They ate at the long table. Evan, Joy, Sophie, Denise, Ortiz drifting in and out, Nathaniel quiet, Claire more so. The talk was small and worth more than noise. The lights held, the floors dried, the day loosened its fist gently. When they were done, Nathaniel rinsed bowls and said nothing dramatic. At the door he touched the post, a quiet pledge. Drive safe, Claire said. Live well, he replied. She watched the gray sedan merge with wet dusk and felt, for the first time, less like a woman bracing against the tide and more like a shore choosing what to hold. Outside, the river remembered its banks. Inside, the willow house did too. The night calmed but didn't quite settle. The river kept talking in its sleep. Claire locked the willow house and walked the perimeter once more, palm grazing paint that was finally dry. The bell gave a breath of a ring as she stepped out. Habit already, comfort already. Margaret's porch light was a small lighthouse. Inside, Claire set her boots by the mat. Margaret lifted a brow that meant inventory. House. Holding, Claire said. Seem behaved. And you? Also holding. They ate reheated chowder, spooning silence like medicine. After, Claire texted a 3-word report to the thread that now felt like family. Dry, light, steady. Replies chimed, Joy's wrench, Denise's prayer hands, Evan's anchor, Sophie's fox. Nathaniel's 2 words followed a beat later. Proud. Here. She didn't answer. Relief held a careful line. Sleep came in short stitches. At 4, her phone lit with Denise. Not St. Mary's, Denise panted. Mrs. Green fell. EMT's on a wreck. Can you? I'm coming, Claire said, already pulling on jeans and a hoodie. Margaret, wordless, handed her a coat and put water on, because mothers do when the world knocks. Mrs. Green's porch light apologized to the street. Evan was there with a neighbor, both in socks and determination. Claire took the inside shoulder. On 3. They lifted slow, settled the older woman into a chair, checked hip, breath, pulse. I told the step to mind itself, Mrs. Green grumbled. It didn't listen. We'll teach it manners tomorrow, Claire said. Tonight you rest. Color returned. Indignation replaced fear. Evan taped a note for the EMTs. Mrs. Green pressed antique brass buttons into Claire's palm. For your drawers, child. Outside the air cooled into a good kind of ache. Evan nudged her toward the inn. Check your seam, he said. I'll loop the river and text if it sulks. The seam was fine. The lobby, lit low, looked like a chapel that believed in coffee. Claire stood in the doorway and let steadiness find her. Her phone buzzed. Nathaniel, awake. Report? She typed, Green Fall. Sisted. How steady. He replied, you have a town. Then proud of your anchors. She slid the phone away and found a broom. Sometimes the best way to answer a loud night is to choose a quiet job and make it true. She swept sawdust, neatened brushes, drafted tomorrow's list. Dawn pinked river's edge. By 7, the town resumed its honest noise. Margaret arrived with paper cups and cinnamon bread. You look like a person who kept a night from breaking, she said. It was a small night, Claire answered. It just needed steady hands. Joy texted, on my way to tuck the seam. Denise, generator slept like a saint. Sophie, breakfast for volunteers at 9. Too much bacon on purpose. Nathaniel called at 8, voice rough in a good way. Bored at 9. I'll drive afterward. You don't have to. I want to carry boxes, he said. If the river sulks, I know where the squeegees live. We'll see, she said, smiling. He could hear it. By mid-morning the willow house swelled with useful bodies. Evan delivered fans that made dignified wind. Joy sealed the seam with a straight, shining line. Denise took a clipboard and became an orchestra. Teenagers, bribed with bacon, moved like tide, dragging rugs to the porch for a sun blink and back again. Robert didn't appear. After lunch, the town quieted. Claire adjusted the river photograph a millimeter, because perfection is often a rhythm, not a pose. A knock sounded. On the steps stood Victoria Langford, hair pinned, raincoat belted, alone. Ms. Langford, Claire said, surprised despite herself. Claire, Victoria answered with a small, truthful smile. I was nearby. Curiosity made a detour. She raised a white paper bag. Scones. The appropriate border offering. Then Cross, Claire said, stepping aside. Victoria entered the way one should enter any room, looking first. The long table. The forgiving paint. The imperfect floor. The framed mourning. You've built a place that knows its job, she said softly. Well done. Thank you, Claire said. They ate a scone on the porch in civilized weather. Victoria didn't mention the diamond. Claire didn't mention the toast. They talked about paint that forgives, towns that test, work that earns being loved. Before she left, Victoria set a small box on the step. For your desk, she said. Inside lay a red glass paperweight the size of a plum, light captured, not asked to prove anything. Kind, Claire said. Appropriate, Victoria replied. We both declined to be symbols. She hesitated, then added, he's terrible at endings and better at beginnings than he admits. Make him practice the middle. I intend to, Claire said. After she'd gone, Claire set the paperweight beside the bell. Light touched it and stayed. Dusk brought a gray sedan and work boots. Nathaniel climbed the porch with boxes labeled books and lamps and block letters that tried not to be a plea. He touched the post without making it a ceremony. Boxes, he announced. Bench, she countered, nodding to planks on sawhorses. Hold while I mark? I can hold, he said and did, steady and quiet, while she measured, scored, and told him where to place his hands. When the bench finally caught its own balance, they sat long enough to convince it they meant to use it. Alarms? He asked. Just the human kind, she said. Those matter most. They carried boxes until the light went thin and excellent. Inside, the lobby looked like future. Outside, the river remembered its banks. At the door, the ritual felt earned. Drive safe, she said. Live well, he returned. She watched the street accept him, then placed the paperweight where it could remind her that color doesn't have to shout and anchors don't always look like ropes. Sometimes they look like benches and bells and hands that know where to hold and when to let go. Chapter 14, Open Doors. Part 1, Coffee Before Promises. The morning began with mist threading the river and the kind of stillness that meant the town was holding its breath for something new. Claire arrived early, key turning smoothly, bell giving its small breath of sound. The Willow House smelled like lemon oil, sawdust, and a first draft that had finally learned its title. Margaret and Evan followed with trays, Sophie with signs that said welcome and be kind to the queue, Joy with a toolbox and a grin. They moved like a practiced quartet. Cups stacked. Scones plated. Lamps checked. The long table wore a runner Margaret had hemmed from an old linen sheet. Soft opening, Claire said, smoothing the edge. Coffee first, then whatever the town decides it needs. Sophie pinned a tip jar sign that read, for wires, windows, and waking up. We'll need change, she added. And patience. At 8, the door opened for the first paying customer. Mrs. Green, cane prudent, lipstick decisive. Does the bell know my name yet? She asked. It will by noon, Claire said, pouring drip and adding cream to the memory level. And the chair near the window is yours. Mrs. Green settled with the authority of history. Teenagers arrived, half shy, hair damp from the river path. The bell learned a rhythm. Neighbors, nurses off shift, a mechanic with hands that told of engines and grace. Evan worked the grinder. Sophie ran the register. Margaret staged scones like a general of sweetness. Joy fixed a sulking hinge between orders. Claire floated and settled, anchored by the long table's quiet gravity. She wiped, refilled, listened, news about bleachers, a lost glove, a grandmother's blood pressure finally cooperating. People left with cups and lingered with sentences. Near 9, the gray sedan pulled up a block away. Nathaniel walked the sidewalk like any man on a morning errand, sleeves shoved at the wrist, eyes soft with trying. He paused at the window, read the small sign, pay what you can today only, and nodded to it like a vow he wished he'd thought of. Inside he took his place in line. No cutting, no glance for special doors. When his turn came, Sophie arched a brow. Order? Drip, he said, smiling at her warning. Room for milk. Whatever scone the house is proud of. The house is proud of all of them, Sophie said, but she gave him cranberry orange and exact change for his 20. He stepped aside. Claire slid the cup toward him with the same unceremonious care she gave everyone else. Congratulations, he said quietly. Thank you for being small, she returned. He touched the lid in salute and found a corner near the door where he could be the kind of watcher that didn't bend a room. He answered 2 questions about the weather and none about his name. The morning unspooled. Mrs. Lynn brought a tray of emergency red velvet and refused money. Denise arrived with nurses who bought coffee like gratitude. A man Claire didn't know left a 20 and whispered that his wife slept easier because the generator hummed. At 10, Robert appeared with a camera slung like a threat and a smile he tried to sound friendly. Interview? He asked. We're pouring coffee, Claire said. The story is hot water and patience. People want a quote. They can have one when they drink their cup. It tastes like work. He angled for a shot of Nathaniel. Nathaniel angled himself behind a father balancing a toddler and the moment slid away. Ortiz's unremarkable cap flickered at the window and then was gone again. A lull at 11 turned into a small rush at 11:10. Claire moved on muscle memory, pause, smile, wipe, breathe, and noticed her hands weren't shaking. The long table held a small universe, an algebra worksheet, a catalog for seed, a Bible open to a psalm about hills. Lunch tomorrow? Evan asked between grinds, voice pitched to her shoulder. Soup and bread. Keep it simple. Simple we can afford, Claire said. We're measuring the day in mugs, not margins. The bell rang for someone who didn't enter. The fox, brushing the step and gone. Near noon, Nathaniel set his empty cup on the counter, a polite end. I need to drive back, he said. Bored at 2. You made your point, Claire said. Quietly. Thank you. I didn't come to make a point, he said. I came to pay for coffee and practice standing where I belong. Which is where? In line, he said. Until invited elsewhere. He left a folded envelope beneath the tip jar and stepped back before she could refuse. Inside later she'd find a simple gift certificate he'd purchased for St. Mary's staff, 50 cups on the house, paid at the register without a press release. For now she only saw him touch the post once, the way you tell yourself you'll be back. He reached the door as Victoria stepped in, raincoat tied, smile small and unperformative. I heard your bell, she said to Claire. It travels. Coffee? Claire asked. Please. Victoria paid like any patron and took the chair across from Mrs. Green. Their heads bent, two women discussing paint and weather, the diamond never once needing a name. The room held. That was the story. Not the man at the window, not the woman in white, not the fox that sometimes crossed. The lamplight, the bell, the smell of cinnamon and clean. Claire wiped the counter and realized the shaking that had lived in her. A small resident with too much rent had finally moved out. At 1 she hung a handwritten sign, back at 3. She turned the dimmer to low and stood in the doorway, letting the room look at her the way a home checks its owner. Are you staying? Yes, she answered out loud to herself, to the quiet that deserved witnesses. Yes. And the town, listening, nodded and quietly, collectively chose her back. At 3 Claire flipped the sign. Afternoon light slanted across the floor, the long table a river of warm grain. The first back from lunch customer was a St. Mary's nurse, sleep soft. She held up a small gift certificate like a hall pass from the hard part of the world. 50 cups? The nurse asked, awed. 50 mornings, Claire said. Use them on bad nights too. Word moved through the hospital like a kindness with legs. By 3:15, more nurses arrived in sea and rain cloud scrubs. They paid with gratitude and left steadier. Evan surfaced with small victories. The hinge that used to sulk now sighed. The bench accepted a second person. The bell's pull string learned discretion. Tomorrow, he said, we try soup. Tomato first. People trust tomatoes. People trust red, Sophie murmured, catching the jar of cinnamon before it wandered off the counter. Fitting. A woman Claire didn't know stood just inside the doorway, hands tucked into the sleeves of a cornflower cardigan. I've driven past for years, she said. When it was boarded up, when it was for sale, when it belonged to no one. Today it looked back. Then come in, Claire said, surprised by how easily welcome lived in her voice. The woman chose a small table near the door and unfolded a letter with careful fingers. Around 4 Naomi called. Coms wants to know if you'd like the rumor mill redirected toward your soft opening. No photos, just a line. Give the rumor mill the day off, Claire said. We're managing. The room was enough today. How's he? Naomi asked, meaning Nathaniel. Behaving, Claire said, and could hear Naomi's grin in the static. At 4:30, rain worried the windows, a gentler rehearsal than yesterday's. Claire lit the lamps 1 notch higher. The room held its own weather. Outside, Willowbrook settled into evening errands. Her phone hummed. Julian, he's on his way. No press. No French. An actual question. The bell knows how to decline, she sent, though something hopeful steadied inside her. Mrs. Lynn's husband brought cookies for your hard hours, and Denise slipped in to collect 2 coffees for the night shift. Tell him, Denise said, meaning the room more than the man, that the generator made our day boring. We've never loved boredom more. Consider it told, Claire said. Her shoulders eased briefly. At 5 she changed the sign to cash only, register naps. People smiled and adjusted. The last rush came like tide. High schoolers with homework, a lineman with shoulders large enough to lift a week, a woman with a baby who slept through the clink of cups. Claire found she could remember regulars after a single visit. The gray sedan pulled up just after 6. Nathaniel entered without his coat despite the drizzle, hair damp, eyes tired in a way that made him look younger or simply human. He waited while a teenager counted pennies, passed his place to a grandfather finding his wallet, and arrived at the counter when the room had room for him. Evening, he said. Evening, Claire echoed. The last of the drip, or I can make a fresh pot. The last, he said. I've had enough beginnings today. She poured, handed him the cup, and watched him notice the near-closed room. Stacked chairs along the wall, a stray book on the long table, the red paperweight catching a thread of light without insisting on it. I have a question, he said, careful. He set his cup on the counter and kept both hands visible, like a man approaching a wild animal and wishing not to spook it or himself. Not about you and me, he added quickly. About me and me. Ask, she said. How do I be useful without making myself the story? The room, rude eavesdropper that it was, seemed to pause. Claire leaned into the answer as if it had been waiting its turn. Arrive early, she said. Carry small boxes. Pay and leave. Don't correct. Don't announce. Learn the names of the boring things that keep a room alive. Filters, bulbs, rags. Show up again without being summoned. If you're praised, pass it sideways. He exhaled, something unclenching. I can do that. I've seen you do harder. He nodded toward the window. May I lock up with you? You may lock one door, she said. I'll do the rest. They closed in quiet choreography. He stacked, she wiped. He flipped chairs, she counted cash. He turned the key in the side door. She checked the seam in the basement out of habit and principle. Back upstairs, he waited at the bell as if to ring for permission, then didn't. At the threshold, he touched the post, habit now but not a claim, and looked at her in the low light. I won't say anything dramatic, he said, a smile ghosting the words. I'll just come back tomorrow with a box of filters and a willingness to be sent away. Good, she said. We open at 8. Drive safe, he offered. Live well, she returned. He stepped out into evening that smelled like wet pavement and a future not yet named. Claire turned the dimmer down until the room glowed like a held breath, pocketed the bell's small sound, and let the day close around her without taking anything she didn't choose to give. When she walked home, the river kept its voice low, the fox crossed as if it owned the deed, and the sky, washed clean, showed a scatter of honest stars. She slept like work, not fear, had tired her. Somewhere in a gray sedan, a man practiced the language of small things. Somewhere in a kitchen, an older woman wrapped scones for morning. And somewhere in a column draft, the sentence that would have hurt her lay unneeded, because the town had already learned the better story, cup by cup, bell by bell, quiet. It would hold. Chapter 15. Practice becomes a life. Part 1. Filters, foxes, and invitations. The next morning unfolded like a well-remembered song. Claire unlocked the willow house, rang the bell once, and let the room wake at its own pace. Steam rose from the first kettle. The long table took a soft breath under early light. Margaret arrived with scones, Sophie with a ledger, Evan with a box of filters and a joke about worship. Filters are the sacraments of coffee, he said. Then we will be devout, Claire answered. Nurses came on night shift legs to redeem gift cups. A teenager practiced an apology for a late library book. Joy coaxed a stubborn outlet back into civility. The rhythm held, pour, listen, refill, breathe. Near 9, the gray sedan appeared 1 block down. Nathaniel walked the last stretch with a paper bag and sleeves shoved to his forearms like he meant to earn his keep. He paused at the sign, pay what you can today only, and nodded to it like a rule he could respect. Filters, he said at the counter, lifting the bag. Bench, Claire countered, pointing to planks on sawhorses. Hold while I mark. No opinions. Understood, he said. They worked without ceremony. He steadied the wood, she measured and drilled. The room's talk washed around them, bleachers, seedlings, a lost scarf, and Nathaniel let it pass through him without catching it, learning that not every thread needs his hand. Between customers, Sophie leaned in. Column fizzled, she reported. The editor ran your invoices and a photo of Joy with the breaker. Town voted, boring is beautiful. May boredom trend forever, Claire said. Denise texted a photo from St. Mary's, the generator panel steady. Boring on purpose, she wrote. A retired teacher stopped in, paid with quarters, and pushed a 5 across the counter marked for light. Claire slipped it into the jar and felt something settle. The exchange rate of small towns where money arrives in exact change and confidence follows, folding chairs and carrying rumors out with trash. Around 10, Hamilton University called. The dean of the business school, Ms. Bennett, were hosting a spring symposium, Women Who Build. We'd love you to speak about the Willow House. Send details, Claire said. I'll consider. Full disclosure, Mr. Cross is closing the day with a keynote on leverage after crisis. It will read whatever we write, she answered. I'll confirm by tomorrow. Margaret, listening, set down a tray. Go, she said. Say what you've learned. The room will wait. Maybe, Claire said. As if on cue, the fox trotted across the lane, brushed the step with its tail and vanished. Work resumed. At 11, a lull opened. Nathaniel wiped sawdust from the bench and waited until the room had other ears. I have an ask, he said, careful. Not a favor. A booking. For the Willow House, she confirmed. For September, he said. A weekend retreat for 5 of my team. Full rate. No speeches. If anyone asks, I'm Nathaniel who brings filters. She needed the income and his name could tilt a room. She let both truths breathe. Terms, she said. You pay like anyone else, bus your dishes, no photos, and you don't use us as a metaphor in any deck. He almost smiled. Deal. I'll sign a clause in ink and good behavior. And if I say no later, you accept it. I will, he said. Even if I hate it. Pencil it, she said. I'll confirm when the beds stop arguing. They finished the bench and tested it with the gravity of 2 people deciding whether their weight could be shared. Held. At noon, Denise arrived with a scrap of hospital letterhead. "A thank you from the night shift," she said. Inside, a list of names and a note. "Your cups tasted like rest." Claire tucked it beside the bell and didn't speak until she could without breaking. Nathaniel bussed his dish. Before he left, he slid a small envelope under the jar. "No logo, no flourish. For the teen who needs a job," he said. "Pay her for Saturdays until cash flow catches up. Consider it repayment for filters I used to believe arrived by magic." "You are learning the names of the boring things," Claire said. "They're not boring," he said. "They're anchors with less poetry." At the door he touched the post and paused. "If you speak at Hamilton," he added, "I'll sit in the back and listen." "Practice more," she said. "We'll see." He left. The room closed the space he'd occupied without fuss. Afternoon picked up. Teachers grating on their feet, a roofer with a laugh that repaired mood, a child who asked whether the bell liked stories. Claire told her yes and listened to one about a green dragon that hated naps. Sophie compiled a list of soup pots for tomorrow's lunch. Evan installed felt on chair feet like forgiveness that squeaked less. By 3, Claire had chosen a title for her talk, "Making Rooms That Hold," and a spine she trusted. Costs, choices, how silence works when you practice it, what a bell can teach a busy man. She didn't know whether she would mention love. She did know she wouldn't mention diamonds. Clouds wrung themselves dry. The fox crossed again toward evening, a punctuation mark with pause. Claire stood in the doorway with a cup gone cool and thought of all the rooms where she had made herself small. This one asked for the opposite. She answered. At closing, the bell sounded once, content. She dimmed the lights and looked at the bench they'd built. Looked back, sturdy, patient. Some things, she thought, you don't sit on until you're ready to stay. Her phone buzzed with Julian. He'll be civil at Hamilton. He promised the dean. Also, he didn't correct your title. Then we're all learning, she typed. The room kept its shape when she left. That felt like love she could live inside, quiet, earned, and no longer afraid of its own weight. Claire taped a fresh page to the Willow House window. Small jobs board. Under it she wrote 3 neat lines. Saturday helper, 3 hours. Sweep, wipe, smile, paid weekly, and tied a pen to the frame with twine. By the lunch lull 2 names had appeared, and a third in block letters with a heart over the I. Hire the heart, Sophie said. People who dot like that stack chairs kindly. We'll interview after close, Claire answered. The afternoon moved the way rooms do when they recognize their work. Refills, a wiped ring, the quiet arithmetic of a till. Evan smoothed the last splinter from the bench. Joy adjusted the bell so the pull wouldn't snag on Hope. Claire kept losing track of time and finding it again in the dimmer's measured light. Lucas arrived with a clay pot. A plant that thrives under neglect and mild chaos, he announced. Hard to kill. Perfect, Claire said. We'll name it Leverage. Lucas laughed, delighted. You'll ruin us all. He set it by the window, admired the jobs board, and advised, hire all 3. Rotate. Teach change, then rooms. You're building a small republic. Then they get a vote, Claire said. First measure, soup tomorrow? Tomato, Lucas replied. Red is governance. A girl clutched the board's pen. I'm Mara, she said. I can sweep. I can also talk without making people tired. Rare gifts, Claire said. Come at 5. By 3 the weather had chosen gentle. Denise stopped for beans for the night shift and slid a flyer across the counter. St. Mary's thank you lunch, Saturday. Claire wrote her name under volunteers and added the Willow House under desserts. The fox crossed at 3:30, audacious in daylight, paused to consider Leverage, then vanished with the confidence of a creature that never attends meetings. At 4 Hamilton University emailed, a spring symposium, women who build. 10 minutes of talk and a panel, modest honorarium. Claire printed the agenda and wrote in the margin, say something useful or keep quiet. When Nathaniel's name flickered as the closing keynote, she underlined it once and moved on. At 5 the sign flipped to interviews. Mara arrived in clean sneakers, hair braided like intention. Theo followed, nervous, thin, determined not to stare at the red paperweight. Lily, Lily, brought a sheet of doodled menus and asked if she could let her the tip jar. Sophie led questions. Claire measured steadiness. They hired all 3 to rotate Saturdays with a rule none pretended to dislike. School first, work second, kindness always. Who do we tell if someone's rude? Mara asked. The bell, Claire said. Ring once and the room will hear you. Lily lettered be kind to the cue on scrap and slid it under the jar like a benediction. Theo counted change aloud, stalled at 13, grimaced, tried again, nailed it. Claire wrote their names in the ledger with a lift in her chest suspiciously like a vow. They closed at 6. Margaret carried home a tray. Evan tarped sawhorses against a rumor of rain. Joy, last to leave, tugged the bell and smiled. It sounds right, she said. It didn't at first. Claire stayed to write bullet points for Hamilton. Make rooms for tired people. Proof isn't weight. Red is not a sin word. Small things, filters, rags, hold the day. She would end with the bell, a single ring to remind a hall what welcome should sound like. Her phone buzzed. Nathaniel, board not on fire. Retreat paperwork ready, clause about metaphors included. May I send it to your inbox labeled unromantic? Label it plumbing, she typed. I'm more likely to read. Copy. Pause. How did the jobs board go? We hired 3, she said. We'll teach them to sweep and to stand their ground. Teach me on Saturdays, he replied. I learned slowly and memorize forever. Claire laughed once, slid the phone away and made one last round. Windows, locks, seam. The town had turned on its lamps. The fox crossed again with the dignity of a promise kept. Soup perfumed Margaret's kitchen like a remembrance of January. They ate with elbows on the table, conspirators against hunger and haste. After, Claire reread Hamilton's agenda and wrote 3 names under thanks. Joy, Denise, Margaret, then 2 more. Sophie, Evan. She hesitated before adding a 6th. In the end she wrote N. Cross small, not because he had saved anything, but because he'd learned to carry bulbs and leave. On her way to bed she paused by the roses, white on one side, red on the other. A bloom had opened in the red, a decision after deliberation. She touched it and did not bleed. Sleep hummed easy. In the middle of the night, Rain tried the windows and thought better of it. Willowbrook dreamt in warm dams and dry basements. The Willow house slept too, bell quiet, table at rest, plant settling its leaves. In a city apartment, a man dropped a folder named plumbing into a shared drive and did not smoke. In a small house with stubborn roses, a woman laid out a clean shirt for tomorrow and chose, again, to make rooms as the way she loved the world and herself. Morning would come with kettles and quiet lines and lists that grew kindly. She would open the door, ring the bell once, and practice the same answer to every question the day carried in. Welcome. Sit. Breathe. You're home for as long as you need to be. And somewhere down the road, Hamilton perhaps, she would stand at a lectern and mean it out loud without shaking. That love is a room you build every day, that distance shrinks when hands are busy, that red belongs at the table. For now the house exhaled. Outside, the river kept to its lane. Overhead, stars pricked holes in a sky that had forgiven the weak. Claire slept like work, not fear, had finally earned the right to be called peace.